Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 78. My name is Justin Young. It's Friday, April 19th, 2024. Tomorrow is 420. We're just a day off from 420. What are your feelings about 420, Mario? I feel like you have strong feelings.
Hadn't even thought about it until you just said it right now.
Yeah, he's over there winking at us.
As of now, my plan is maybe to do an Ocarina of Time randomizer with some friends.
Whoa, slow down there, Mario.
Crazy.
Don't go overboard celebrating this historic national holiday. I am joined by Mario Sanders and Alicia Utecht. Christina is out this week. We wish her well. So how have you two been?
I'm doing okay. This week was busy. A lot of catch up. I was gone last week. I went back home for a cousin's wedding, which was nice. It was hard. It was the first big family gathering since my dad died. But it was good to see family, good to see my aunts and cousins and all of that. And it was nice to travel. It was in the Monterey. And so we went to the aquarium the next day, which was really nice. We were talking about it, and I don't think I've been maybe since high school. So it's been a while. But it was nice going with some East Coast cousins. One of my other cousin's fiancés, she's never been because she's always lived on the East Coast. So yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
And you went to a video game museum?
A video game museum, yeah, which was just an arcade, but it was cool. It had all the old 80s arcade machines. It was like $10 for an hour or $22 for the whole day, which honestly is a really good deal. You didn't have to have a bunch of quarters. You just got to free play whatever you wanted. And so it was fun. I went in with a couple of cousins the day of the wedding before we all had to get ready. And we just sort of sampled all of the different things. I don't think we really stayed on anything too long, mostly because we didn't want to hold anybody else from being able to play it. But it was really cool. I think the game that I sent a picture of, just because you had mentioned it in a previous podcast, or if we had talked about it, was Revolution X, the Aerosmith shooter. I didn't realize
music is your power.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was a shooter. So that was that was
even better.
Yeah, I was
what sort of game did you? What kind of game did you think it was?
I had no idea.
A side scroller beat 'em up.
Maybe
you're Steven Tyler,
yeah,
taking on the hippies.
I honestly had no idea. Maybe I did, and maybe you did say that, but I was like, oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting. And
I love the idea that there might have been a whole universe of Aerosmith games. Aerosmith got put into every different genre. There's the Aerosmith driving game, the Aerosmith side scroller beat 'em up,
Aerosmith platformer.
Yeah.
Aerosmith roguelike. What does that look like?
It's just all the different concerts you do. Some of the concerts you're mentally there and able to perform well, and others maybe not so much.
It's a rock band roguelike.
There we go.
You're having to just continuously perform the same set every night. You get to vary one song. That's the only choice you have.
I was gonna say maybe the screen is a little blurrier depending on how sober your performers are.
Yeah, when the calendar comes around to 420, or maybe some unique issues. We're really mellow for tonight's show, everyone. So what do you think of Revolution X now actually playing it?
It was fun. We talked about this the other day, and that is a game that is designed to eat quarters. They want all of the quarters that you could possibly own. I think it's the second level that we got through, and you're destroying a helicopter. And I think we were shooting probably the wrong part of the helicopter for a while, but it was just holy moly, this thing has a lot of health. And I was talking about it with friends because we played through the Simpsons arcade game, the beat 'em up, and the final boss Mr. Burns in that game has like 5 different phases. And, you know, by that time, you're taking so much damage, you know, 1 or 2 hits kills you. But by that time, you are also very much in sunk cost mode where you are, oh, I have to get to the end. I have to get to the end. So you're just burning quarters left and right.
I've spent $20 to get this far.
Yeah.
I have to, if it takes another $10, I might as well finish the game.
Yeah. I think the ones where I definitely feel that are like which is very much just gambling at that point, is like the quarter pusher machines.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's like, I've got 4 of the 5 cards you have to collect. I got to get the last one.
That's how they get you.
That is absolutely how they get you. I'm due at this point.
It's just like slot machines, right? Like everybody thinks it's got to pay out sometime.
Right.
Like, I can't walk away now. What if it pays out as soon as I walk away? What an idiot I'll feel like then.
But Balatro is the gambling game.
Well, that's what I was just about to bring up. One of the streamers that I and Christina watch, you know, there's the Wheel of Fortune tarot card that has like the 1 in 4 chance of, you know, making your jokers cool by adding points to them. And every time, like, it doesn't matter what else is in the tarot pack, he's picking that one, and it misses. And he's like, I'm due. We're due.
It's 1 in 4. I've lost 3 times. The next one I have to win.
The developer has been in his chat a number of times, and so he'll always call out the developer. He's like, "Local Thunk, it's 1 in 4. It's supposed to be 1 in 4. What's going on here? Look at the code, brother."
Oh man, that's great.
I have the same problem with that game. Every time I pick the Wheel of Fortune one, because I'm like, well, this is the best one, right? Like, it's upgrading. This is the only way I can upgrade my jokers.
Imagine how incredible it's going to be when it hits.
Yeah, it's going to be the best thing ever. There's also the
lucky cards when you get the $20 1 in 15 chance on them. Oh man,
I always like the one, and I always get it when I have like a full hand of 5 jokers. Mm-hmm. But it's the one where it is, we will destroy all your jokers, and one of them will give like a -2 or something. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I have 4 great jokers, and I have this one terrible joker that's useless. But the odds are it'll land on one of the great jokers, right? And then I can just rebuild because I'll have 6 joker spots. And without fail, it will hit the horrible joker.
You have to sell it. You've got to sell that horrible joker. I know how bad it feels, but you've got to sell it. You can't leave yourself open to that.
Yeah, it's this is why I don't actually gamble. Because I would just like hate myself every day. Like the people who I feel bad for people who get gambling addictions. But like, I mean, I get the like the self-resentment that people develop from that. Cause like I would feel that. I felt that way playing video games.
Yeah.
Like imagine if it was real money I can't afford to lose. Cause if I can't afford to lose it because I need to buy video games. Revolution X, like the Curry Center at Murray State University in the basement used to have, they had a bowling alley and they had a Revolution X machine. And we used to play a lot of that game. And I'm pretty sure at some point we may have beat it. Like we just pumped enough quarters into it. I know I beat it on emulator later, definitely. And it's just it's a bizarre game. Like it's bizarre to make a game of a rock band and then to make it a game where like you are fighting against like a fascist, like
like a military police or something like that.
That have taken over, and you're like the heroes are I guess actually you're not playing as the band, you're like with the band.
Yeah.
So
I'm with the band.
Yeah, you're
Let
like
me
the
through.
roadie.
Yeah. Well, and I know we were having a conversation. I think that's what makes, I don't know if this is what like arcades are turning into, museums, but in that sense of like a $10 free play or a $22 all day free play where, my cousin and I, we could just die over and over and over again and immediately hit the button and not have to like scrounge through our pockets or figure out, I got to get my, money back, or I got to turn my 5 into quarters or whatever.
Yeah.
You could just sort of keep playing it so you didn't have to worry about that. So you could just like really try your best to like enjoy what's actually happening on it and not feel the stress or the pressure of, oh, I'm on low HP. I got to try and survive until, so-and-so comes back so that they can get in so that I can go get more quarters and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's why a lot of times when people ask, why don't we get games like that anymore? Well, there's a good reason we don't get games like that anymore. Those games were designed to drain quarters out of you. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you make, when they start trying to make side-scroller beat-em-ups for home consoles, one of the things people found out really quickly is you can blow through the Ninja Turtles arcade game in, like, less than an hour.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a great game, but, like, you blow through it in less than an hour, then, like, what is the value of that game?
Yeah, I think the Simpsons game took us maybe 40 minutes.
Yeah, and I know Jeff Gersman always tells this story that he bought Strider for the Genesis like the day it came out, and he's like, I took it home and like beat it in less than 2 hours, and he said I spent $70 on that game, and he was like, I was like, fuck, like I spent $70 on this, like, and I just feel ripped off, and so you can't make that sort of game. So how do you take those genres like the arcade shooter like that, and how do you make that into a $70 experience today? And it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
You make the Aerosmith roguelike, duh.
I mean, I love that game. It's not a great game, but I love it for the craziness of it. But I also like kind of know maybe those games never do come back. And like they've brought side-scroller beat-em-ups. They made that new Ninja Turtles game, Shredder's Revenge. That's a really good game. They made the Streets of Rage 4 game. That's a good game. But I mean, even those, it's hard to justify for a lot of people the price because those are still fairly small games.
Yeah, I've never gotten all the way through it. I've only done maybe the first couple of levels, but I've always heard really good things about the River City Girls games.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long those are. But those are also maybe $15.
Yeah. I haven't. That's a shame of mine. I have not played those. I really should. They released so many River City games.
Yeah.
There for a while, and it seemed like every few months there was a new game coming out with River City in the title, and then a lot of them weren't very good, weren't recapturing that feeling, and that's the one that everybody kind of points to and says, no, this is the like real spiritual successor to River City Ransom, which is a game I love a lot, but it's also a game that's kind of aged kind of poorly in some ways. So, yeah. Alicia, you have a show coming up. Is that next weekend?
I have so much happening right now. It is officially that time of the semester. This weekend, the theater department is doing their Big Muddy Play Festival, which I'm in the theater MFA playwriting like workshop class. So I have a play reading today, a table read at 3:30. And then next weekend in the Kleinau, we have A Martian Odyssey, which is co-directed by Juno, who's one of our master's students, and myself. And that is an adaptation of a 1930s sci-fi short story. So it's a lot of fun, and it's really, a lot of really great stuff happening, but it's very busy. It's exhausting.
I understand. It really is that time of the semester. This like last final month, like the dash to finals week is really stressful for everyone. So hopefully everybody gets through it. If you're listening to this and you are also stressed about finals, know that your fellow students and your professors are also all stressed about it. So let's go ahead and move into what you've been playing. Alicia, what have you been playing?
It's really just been Pokemon Go for me, honestly. And even that, I haven't been playing as much just because so much of my time has been, okay, I gotta sit down and do homework. And it's been kind of icky weather this week, either too hot to go out on walks or pouring rain. So I have really not played a lot, just a little bit more Pokemon Go, but nothing really notable other than they did roll out the new Avatar updates, which are something.
Avatar updates?
Yeah, so your player character, your avatar.
Okay.
Yeah, not blue skin, not Last Airbender.
Well, that's why I just saw something the other day about Avatar: The Last Airbender. They got like animated movies coming out or something.
Aang,
They
the
got
Last Airbender, and
delayed or something like that. But
Eric Nam is voicing Aang, and I cannot wait. But
that film got delayed.
yeah, it's delayed to
Yeah.
2026 now. But yeah, they rolled out updates for the character avatar with, on the one hand, it's nice because you can like change your avatar's body type and stuff like that, but I don't know, it looks weird, and I don't even know if I have a better word for it than that, where it before it didn't look strange and now it does.
Yeah.
But Niantic has said, they've been hearing the complaints and the comments, and so they're working on it. So we'll see. But yeah, that's really been it from me, is just trying to not lose my streaks of spinning Pokestops and catching Pokemon every day.
Okay. I think it's understandable entirely. People aren't playing a lot right now. So, Mario, have you been playing a lot?
yeah, well, having not been on in basically a month, yeah, I guess there is quite a bit that I've played over the last few weeks. I think probably the three most notable ones, or at least the three that I would want to talk about, are Tony Hawk's Underground, Power Quest, and Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero.
Are you getting into that because that's having a moment with speed running right now?
No. Is that game having a moment?
Yeah. So Giant Bomb played through that game on their series Blight Club, and the Mike Minotti, the person who was playing it, then after finishing it, which took quite a while to finish once, got into, well, why don't I speed run this now that I've like learned how to beat it, and now has like, I think, a top 5 time for like speed running that game, because apparently once you know how to get through that game, it's actually not that difficult.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
like
that's fair.
playing through it the first time is quite the challenge. So I didn't know that had kind of blown up a bit on Twitch and stuff. So I didn't know.
No, I didn't. I didn't know that. So yeah, I think I mentioned in March I did a little game event thing, and I also do the N64 game group with friends, and that is probably at the bottom for a lot of people. Is Mortal Kombat Mythologies at the bottom of the N64 in terms of games, and I understand why. I don't know if I'd say it's that bad. I would replay it before other games on the N64. That may or may not have monster trucks in it.
I was about to say, on a scale from Monster Truck to Mario 64.
What if a Mortal Kombat game had a monster truck as a character?
I could see it on the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, that game it's not good. It's
How far did you get?
I beat it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I beat it.
I'm actually impressed because I played that game when it originally came out, and I got to the second level with the wind where you're jumping the platforms, and I was like, screw this game.
I guess I will say, so like my review is also impacted by I had no qualms about using the infinite lives cheat code.
Yeah.
It's not infinite, it's 1,000 lives, but that's more than enough.
Only 1,000 lives.
Only 1,000 lives. Yeah, I had no hesitation.
Can you imagine if you're at
that.
the last boss and on live 999? You're just like, oh God, no.
Well, so that's the funny thing is even though you have 1,000 lives, it still only shows 9 in the corner.
Yeah.
So
lives.
you better keep track.
So it's I mean, you better keep track. But that was what a friend was like. Yeah, you just never know. You don't know how many times you died, so it starts to feel like, is this thing gonna start ticking down?
That's like a cool science fiction story. Like you're given 1,000 lives, you can die over and over, but like you're not told how many, which one you're on.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments in that game where the combat feels good, and I think do you know if this person from Giant Bomb played the PlayStation version.
I think he was playing the PlayStation version because it has
All the cutscenes.
Yeah, it has the better like full motion video stuff.
It seems like that version is better. I can't imagine it's that much better, but it looks better from everything that I've watched.
I don't think it plays much better. I think it's just the visual.
Maybe. I think the only reason I might say that it may control better is the control stick and the D-pad on the N64 make controlling Sub-Zero weird, because when you're using the control stick, he always wants to sprint.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to like walk slow. And so I can't imagine it's much better. It's like a D- to an F, maybe. Like, we're not, there's nothing to celebrate, but, I don't know. I'm also just don't feel like I'm very good at fighting games. So all of the fighting, I am like having to go into the menu, like, okay, I feel like somebody who's never played video games, like, okay, I got to do a high punch and then a low punch, and then I got to go back in order to do any of the combos.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's a video game, technically.
It is one of the video games of all time.
Yeah.
So the N64 version, does it have any of the full motion video in it?
No.
Okay, so it's all just like in-game cutscenes.
It's not even in-game cutscenes. It's like stills from the FMV with text.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you lose a lot of the charm of that game.
Oh yeah. I was streaming it and we watched the cutscenes after the game. I will say the one thing that's probably better about the N64 version is on that level with the wind, you don't have to watch yourself fall into the pit every single time you die.
Sure.
Which that I think would get old incredibly fast.
Yeah.
It's fascinating hearing these differences. And like you said that this guy was playing the PS2 one. And like
PS1.
PS1.
Yeah.
The PlayStation version. And like if he was speedrunning that one, how it would be different, like just without the cutscenes, without such a long death animation, how the N64 one would be faster to speedrun in some way, I would think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what loading times would potentially be like.
True.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you can skip the cutscenes, but maybe not.
Yeah.
My understanding is that in the speedrunning community, it's why they choose particular versions of games as like the sort of canonical one to speedrun.
Yeah.
Like that happened a lot, my understanding, with like PC games. So there'd be like a VGA version of the game released, but also an EGA version. And the EGA version, because it's simpler graphics and colors, actually loads slightly faster.
Yeah.
Or there's a CD-ROM version that has full voice acting, so that's actually slower. So they'll run the one without voice acting because they can like click through it quicker.
Yeah. Like I think Breath of the Wild is fastest in French. I think Super Mario Odyssey is fastest in Japanese, so they'll like switch the language.
Yeah, I think
for the text
I think
speed.
for Odyssey it's simplified Chinese because it's a fewer characters. But but yeah, and most speedrun leaderboards will just have different leaderboards for different versions. So I haven't looked at the Sub-Zero leaderboards, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's just two different versions. With newer games, they now have like tools. So I've got a friend who speedruns a lot of the Yakuza games, and they have like a load time,
the TAS
like
runs.
eliminator. It basically it pauses the timer on load time, so that if you're playing on a PlayStation as compared to an Xbox as compared to a PC, load times aren't going to get in the way of the actual run itself. It's not counted against the time.
Does that count as a tool assisted speedrun then, or?
I don't think so. I think it's just whatever the community has agreed on, that like across community wide, if you're speedrunning these games, use this. I mean, I guess technically it is a tool assisted speedrun because you're using whatever this, like probably just like a live split timing.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily
add-on.
Changing the game. It's just changing.
It's just literally the timer.
That's why I'm like, I could see it not being TAS.
It would be this. It's similar to like people using like an auto splitter.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not
that's not
counted
TAS.
as tool assisted.
So yeah, it doesn't actually like eliminate the loads in the game. It just
Right.
pauses the timer while the game is loading.
Right.
Yeah, so like I said, I played that. Power Quest is a Game Boy Color fighting game, which is probably like a massive red flag if like there ever was one. But honestly, it's pretty decent up until the final boss. The final boss is like a tournament, and there are 4 rounds. You don't regain all of your health after each round. So if you lose half of your health, you maybe gain like a third of it back. Probably not even a third, maybe like a fifth of it back going into the next round. And so you have to get through all 4 of these rounds. And it's funny because that game is so like you can easily like cheese your way, like doing the same move basically through every single fight up until the final fight. And that's when the game says, oh, you better have learned how to play this.
A lot of fighting games were like that because I was very cheesy with a lot of them.
And like I'll say it, so a friend, like I said, this was another one for that event. A friend was playing it. He got to the final tournament maybe like an hour and 15 minutes, and he finished the game after 7 hours. So like that's how long the final boss took. And a big part of that is just after you lose to the final boss, you have to start the tournament over again. So you have to do those 3 fights.
Okay.
And there's just like long, unskippable text before the actual final boss fight. So there's just like a lot there. But that's a game I played a lot as a kid. I don't know if I ever beat it as a kid, but it was fun to go back and same thing, finally beat that one. I think all of us who ended up playing it, we made a save state before just to be able to like practice against the final boss. And then after we like could kind of get it, even getting consistent meant beating him like 1 out of 10 times. It was not like we're good enough to like cruise through this fight. You know, both friends who also played it, they were like, yeah, it was funny reading the speed run of like the person who has the world record, like, yeah, this is a good game. I'm never running it again until somebody learns a consistent strategy against the final boss. Like even the speedrunners are just like playing the final boss on vibes.
Do your best.
God be with you.
Yeah. And then, like I said, we would start the tournament over, and 2 of us eventually got through it. But it's a fun game. Like I said, for a Game Boy Color fighting game, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, because Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy is like infamous for how horrible of a fighting game it is. So to hear there's any good fighting games on the Game Boy is kind of impressive.
Yeah, it's like you're like an elementary school kid and you're fighting like toy model robots. And so there are like 6 different models and they all have sort of different stats. And the nice thing is, so you can buy upgrades, but the upgrades transfer across models. So if you like use one model until like halfway through the game and you've bought like 3 upgrades for it, and then you want to swap models, you have those same level upgrades for your new model.
That's nice.
It's incredibly nice.
Yeah.
Especially for a game of that era.
Yeah. Because that is like the speedrun strategy, is you use one character up until that final tournament and then you swap characters. Because the final boss is always a mirror match. He always uses the same model that you use. And if you use the like cheese strategy is to use like the strongest character and just grab the opponent repeatedly over and over again. But like he will frame one grab you every single time if you try to get close to him. So you can't use that character against the final boss.
So it's just broken in a fun way.
Sort of. I mean, like there are many things where like like I said, it requires you to know how to play that game in order, and you still got to get a little lucky, but it is pretty brutal playing all those 3 fights, getting through all that text, and then dying in like 6 seconds, because that's just how it goes. Sometimes he will like 8 move combo you, and you're just like, well, that was fun. Time to start over again.
All right. And what was the third game?
Tony Hawk's Underground.
Okay. Was that the first time you've played?
No,
the Underground?
I've played Underground a ton. I think Underground is just like a very interesting time capsule of a particular era of. I feel like if you wanted to know what it was like to grow up as like a millennial boy, play like Tony Hawk's Underground, because it's very like. It's
Jackass.
It's like peak popularity of like Jackass and Viva La Bam and all of those shows on MTV.
I mean, they're in the game.
Yeah, and so it's it's just an interesting time capsule of like, well, could you make this game, or is this one that they would remake today? It's like, probably not, but maybe. Like a lot of the humor in it is just that era of humor, and so it's a good game in the sense of it's probably my favorite of the Tony Hawks, probably just because I played it the most. But yeah, that's probably the three that I would want to talk about.
It's a good Tony Hawk. I mean, like, I think at the time some people were disappointed because it felt like a departure from the previous games, but like those games, we'd had the 4 previous Tony Hawk games, and they were getting, like, they had run out of new things to add to the Tony Hawk games. Like, you'd had the revert, you'd had the, and all that added, and you got to a point where, like, well, what else can you add? And I think in 4 they added where you could get off the board, and it's like, okay, what else do we do with this? And it was like, okay, well, we need a whole new sort of stylistic approach to these games.
Basically, it's like they added a story.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, to tell a story, you're not going to be collecting skate in all of the levels anymore. So it is. A lot of the friends who I played it with were like, this is not. A couple of them, one of them is the first time he had ever played it, and he was like, this is not Tony Hawk to me. And I'm like, and that was the thing, is like, I was watching him and he was struggling on like the final challenge, and I was just like, I think I texted him saying like, oh yeah, you are definitely like a Tony Hawk purist. And I can tell because you don't ever get off the board. And I'm like, whereas like, if you were to go and watch me do that same challenge, I'm getting on and off the board as basically any opportunity I have. Is like, to me, such an integral part of those games is getting off and running around. But yeah, it was interesting watching somebody who had never played it before, just because that's one that I played so much growing up.
No, I like that. That first Underground, I think, is a really good game. There's a mod on the PC that came out before they did the remake of 1 and 2, where they take, I think it's Underground 1, but maybe it's Underground 2. Anyways, and they like ported all the levels ever from the Tony Hawk games into it. And it's pretty neat, just because you have basically every Tony Hawk level in that game. And like you talking about, well, it's different, but like the only real difference is you can get off the board. Like they carry over all the like gameplay style, and it still feels like Tony Hawk.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I think the skating in it is really good. I was joking with friends that getting off the board essentially turns Tony Hawk into Balatro, where you're like just cheesing like the combo multiplier, because getting off the board doesn't end your combo, so you can like do all of your tricks, get off, and like in midair, get off the board. It keeps the combo going, and then you can like do it all over again. And so, like I said, it gets a little cheesy, but I don't know. That's also how it just is sometimes.
I'll say that's the fun of it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good game. Like, I mean, those Tony Hawk games didn't really start to go downhill bad until after the Underground games. It's like when they start getting to, I forget, I get the names, like Project Skateland.
American Wasteland I thought was pretty decent. After that, I didn't really play any of them.
Yeah.
Because there's Underground 2, and then American Wasteland.
Okay, Project Skateland is the DS game, maybe? Maybe that's what it is.
I think it's American Skateland.
Okay. And then Project 8.
Project 8, yeah.
That's the title. Yeah. So they kind of they just ran out of new things to add to those games.
Yeah.
That's where they really ran into trouble, because they were pumping those out one a year. That's what everybody forgets. They were making one a year of those.
Yeah.
So like when you look at 1, 2, and 3, which are like, 3 is kind of when they peak as far as like, we've added everything that you could possibly want gameplay wise to this. And you're like, they did that in 3 years. Like they were like, and they made like, progressively the best game, like one of the best games ever made. Right. And you can argue about which has the best maps, but like 3 has the best gameplay of any of those. So, all right. I have a couple of games here I'm going to talk about, but I'm just going to go ahead and move into the news, because the games I want to talk about tie into the news. So let's go on into news. And this week there was a Nintendo Indie World show. Nintendo showed off some indie games coming to the Switch. So we're going to kind of go through and talk about these. If there's any of these either of you want to talk about more in depth, jump in. And then there's a couple of these that I played that I want to talk about. So they showed off some more of Little Kitty Big City. So I did play the demo for this when they first announced this game, which was last year, I feel like sometime.
Yeah.
You know, like at that time I talked about it here, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but like I just, it wasn't as engaging as I wanted it to be. Like it's fun to play as a cat, but like there's just not enough that was actually kind of like fun to do. So I'm interested in seeing the final game because that's a demo and they've been working on it for months since then. So I wonder if the game has been sort of touched up any since then.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I don't know that I'll buy it right away because, like you said, I mean, I'm far from the first person to say this, but it's very much Untitled Goose Game vibes.
I was just gonna say, is that what it's sort of similar to? Maybe not an aesthetic, but
This one,
I think aesthetically more than gameplay wise. Yeah.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the YouTube comments on the trailer is like it's not quite Untitled Goose Game in that like you do actually have a goal besides just chaos. Like the cat is trying to get home, but it's very much Untitled Goose Game vibes. So I feel like it's going to be one of those that'll be really fun to watch other people play like on Twitch or whatever, and then potentially buy for myself. But at the same time, it's just so darn cute. I mean, the fact that the run button is literally called Zoomies just makes me so happy. But it was really funny because I didn't watch the whole Indie World Showcase, but I watched the trailer for this morning. And like, my cat was over in the window eating breakfast when I started it. But by the time I finished the trailer, he's sitting there looking at me like, why on earth would you play with a video game cat when I'm right here?
Yeah, cats don't handle their jealousy well.
No, but I am really looking forward to this game. I think it's just going to be solid fun.
I mean, it's a very sort of basic platformer with some basic puzzle solving, right? And it has the aesthetic. The cat looks really cute in it and everything. It just...
his little hats.
It just, so far, what I've played of it, isn't resonating with me in the same way that something like Stray did. I think Stray is a much more engaging game. But, I'll withhold judgment until the final game's out, because they might change some stuff. They announced a game called Yars Rising, which is it's a set in the Yars universe. So Yars Revenge was a very famous game for the Atari 2600. And they have taken that game, which was a shooter, and turned it into a Metroidvania. And so is done by Way Forward, who's done lots of like kind of cool 2D type games. But as you're exploring the world, you have to hack into game systems or hack into systems at times, and that switches to a mini game, and that mini game is based on Yars Revenge. So that's how they're tying it back to the original Atari 2600 game. For me, I am super excited about this. Like, somebody figured out a way to make a sequel to Yars Revenge today, which does not seem like a game you can make a sequel to, and it's a Metroidvania, and Way Forward's working on it. So there's a lot, I think, to be excited about that game. But there's no demo yet for that one, so we'll have to wait. They showed off a game called Refined Self, the personality test game. And mostly I was kind of impressed because this really had DS vibes.
Say this feels like Brain Age.
Yeah.
I didn't watch this, so I've just been sort of looking at it. I didn't know what to expect when I looked it up. It looks really cool. The graphics, are very DS. I think that's a good way of describing it. It says like what is this reminding me of? And yeah.
Well, I think even just the idea, like, hey, you're going to play a game that's going to tell you your personality type, right? Like that seems like something straight out of a DS game, which I think is cool. Like those are the sorts of games we haven't been getting a lot on the Switch. It feels like when we switched over, a lot of those kind of, mobile forward thinking games kind of died. And it's cool to see somebody making a game like that. Maybe it won't be anything like that, but it definitely gives me those vibes.
Yeah. And it looks like there's, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a story to it to something.
Yeah.
And like this character that you play as. But yeah, it looks interesting.
Speaking of DS vibe games, they showed off a game called Sticky Business.
The game looks so cute.
Which is a game about stickers and like decorating with stickers and everything and running your own business.
Yeah, you've got your sticker business.
Yeah, which again feels like a DS game, right? And I mean that in a complimentary way. I don't mean that dismissively. I mean, it's the sort of small scale like game that we start to see in that era, right? And seeing this as an indie studio now developing it, I think is really cool. It has a cool look to it. I don't know this is a game that I'm going to go gaga over, but I think there's definitely an audience for this game.
It does look adorable. I'm looking at it right now. It looks adorable.
See? Told you. Let's see. The next game was Anton Blast. So this is one I actually did play. Anton Blast is a Wario-like. So
sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, it looks like a Pizza Tower Wario Land 4 type of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you played Pizza Tower, which is also a Wario-like, these are games taking Wario Land, specifically Wario Land 4 on the GBA. And hey, we haven't gotten one of those in a while. What if we made one? So they did that with Pizza Tower. They've done this with Anton Blast. I did play the demo for this for a little bit. It's a little too chaotic, like for me. There's a little too much just like going on where I feel like I don't know how much control I actually have. It's one level, the demo, so like I haven't played the full game. But after playing that, I kind of just came out of it like, well, I feel like I interacted, but I don't feel like I played very much. Like I don't feel like I was doing an awful lot. I was kind of on autopilot. And so like maybe there's more depth as you go along, but it didn't have that Nintendo feel to it, right? That made you feel like, there's a lot of control in this. But if you're looking for that type of game, right? Like it does evoke that feeling fairly well.
I say chaotic, out of control. Sounds more like a 2D Sonic experience to me. This is one that I'll give a try. Like Wario Land 4 is a game I really like. I liked Pizza Tower, so I'll give it a good try.
So that's actually a very good comparison. It felt like a bad Sonic game.
Okay.
Not all Sonic games, right? Like there are like 2 good Sonic games.
Well, maybe 1.5 good Sonic games.
This feels like a bad 2D Sonic game. In that it's chaotic and it's out of control, and you're like, well, stuff happened, but like I don't know how much control I had over any of that stuff that was happening.
I was just watching Mario grin that whole time you were talking and being like, he's about to say something that I'm not.
I was like, do I say this? Yeah, I'm gonna say it.
I mean, it's a valid point, right? Like they showed off a game called Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and
good name.
Yeah, it's a cool name, and it has a cool look to the game. It's a very like kind of noir look to it, and there's puzzle solving in the game, but like I guess I still don't know entirely what kind of game it is. They definitely show off the puzzle solving. It looks like there's maybe some horror elements in it as well. But you have a cool title, you have a cool look. That's enough to get me interested a lot of times.
Yeah.
They also had a game called Europa. So this is the other one that I played. So Europa is, so the game Ni no Kuni that came out a few years ago, the one that was the Studio Ghibli like cooperative project and everything. So it's co-opted that look. So it very much looks like, Ni no Kuni, but it is in a sort of Breath of the Wild sort of open world. And you are running through this world and you are collecting these sort of wisp in the wind that I don't know what they do, but theoretically they do something. And then you're collecting other items that are upgrades of some sort, which I don't know what they're upgrading, but theoretically they're upgrading something. And the game itself is very motion-based. So it reminded me kind of Journey. So like when you're going down a hill, you kind of slide down the hill and everything. You don't fall into the water. You kind of like glide over the water and skim over it. And so like all of that's really cool. My issue with the game is incredibly floaty. So it looks amazing while you're doing everything. It never felt good to me doing anything. Like there were times where it would start to feel good and then you would just like, all of a sudden you're like kind of just levitating over this thing. And you're like, wait, how is that happening? It's like, it feels like it's out of my control. And so it never had that tight control you expect of a Zelda game. And it never felt like the precision platforming that you'd want, but it never felt as smooth as Journey either. So it's kind of in this no man's land of there's not a lot of precision, but neither is it super smooth. So it kind of feels like the physics are broken at times. And then there's not a whole lot to do in the game world other than collect these items. And so the game world looks amazing. And like, I liked seeing more of it, but I didn't actually like playing the game.
And was this also a demo?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, again, right? Like they may improve all that. Like, tweaking of the controls is one of the last things that often gets done. So maybe that feels better by the time the game's released.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It looks beautiful. I was going to tease you. I was like, is the reason you didn't like it because it's anime? But no, like, it does. It looks really great.
I really like Ni no Kuni. Like that's a flawed game, but it's a game that looks so amazing you can overlook the flaws.
Yeah.
And this game looks so amazing. I would be happy to overlook the flaws if it played slightly better.
Yeah. Were you playing this on the Switch?
I was playing this on a PC.
Okay.
So, I don't know how it would look on the Switch compared to the PC.
Sure.
Like if it's downgraded at all. But it's a really cool looking game.
Yeah. It almost makes it more disappointing that it's like, I would really love to play this, but I don't know if I really want to play this.
That's how I felt. I was more mad after booting it up and seeing how good it looked in motion. Because it started out and you're kind of like, okay, well, this plays fine to start out. And then as you play more of it, you're like, oh, this is disappointing. But this game still looks amazing. And then you're like, well, okay, they're not going to show me that much more that's cool. And then they do. And they start showing you more cool stuff. And you're like, damn it, why can't this play well? I want this to be a really good game. It deserves to be a really good game looking this good. And again, maybe somebody else would have a different reaction to it. Just the feel of it turned me off. And, a lot of times I like those chill games. I like Journey. I like, games like Flower, which is all about vibes. But like that game at least feels good while you're playing it. Let's see. They showed off Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. This is a roguelike beat 'em up featuring the Ninja Turtles in a sort of isometric view. My understanding is this game is on Apple Arcade already. And so this is it coming to other systems. Looks neat, and I like the Ninja Turtles. And I'm glad if they're making a new Ninja Turtles game, it doesn't just look like Shredder's Revenge. Like, try something different. before you go back to that formula. They showed off Cat Quest 3, which I believe this is the first one that's been pirate themed, and you actually control little pirate ships and battle the pirate ships. So it looks like Sid Meier's Pirates from that perspective, which made this game a lot more interesting to me. So cute little cats that you're controlling, they're dressed up as pirates, and you get to control their little pirate ship shooting at other pirate ships. So it's a pretty cool looking game. It's got a very similar look to it as the previous 2 Cat Quest games. But it looks like, I think we talked about this maybe last week or a few weeks ago. One of the neat things is to see indie game developers actually iterate and build franchises now. So it's not the one-off game. It is, hey, we've made 3 Cat Quest games now, and we've like kind of honed it in into what this series should be. And to me, this is the best looking of those games I've seen so far. They showed off a game called Stitch, which is not based on Lilo and Stitch, but is based on cross-stitching. So it is a game about cross-stitching where it's a puzzle game. You are given numbers, and you have to choose which blocks that you're going to cross-stitch, and then you create little patterns. So it kind of looks a bit, there's some Sudoku vibes going on there. There's some Picross vibes going on there. It looked neat. Again, it has the vibe of a DS game, right? The sort of game you would buy your mom to play on the DS, and she would get really into. But it looked neat. It looked like something I would enjoy playing. So I was kind of impressed by that. They showed off a game called Schim, which is, again, an isometric game where you are a character who can only move in the shadows. So you're having to sort of manipulate the game world so that shadows are in the right place. So, for example, you're jumping from shadow to shadow. So sometimes you're having to wait till a car goes by and cast a shadow so that you can move within the game world into the shadow. And then it showed things like a swing set and the swinging back and forth, and you would have to time it to jump into the shadow when it's at the furthest, so then you can move on to the next area. It looked neat. Had a cool look to it and everything. They showed off a game called Duck Detective: The Secret Salami, which is neat that they're making a sort of detective, focused game with a duck.
I watched a friend play a demo of this during the Steam indie demo thing that was going on. It looks cool. I watched him play a few of them, and this was one of them. And it's a fun looking game. It's cute.
My thing is, if you're going to make a duck detective game, right? Why, go out and get the license for Howard the Duck.
Darkwing Duck, though.
Well, that's Disney. That's going to cost so much money.
Well, so is Howard the Duck.
This Marvel,
I'll
right?
say.
Look, Disney is cornering the market on ducks.
Duck detectives. This is against the monopoly here. The people demand options.
The Disney duck monopoly.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be like a Donald Duck detective story at some point.
I mean, he's probably a better detective than he is healer.
I feel like DuckTales, right? Like,
yeah.
He's an explorer in those, so like he goes on adventures sometimes.
Well, I was gonna say, like Duck Dodgers, but that was just
Daffy.
sci-fi.
I'll say that.
Well, that was also that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. I don't think Daffy had much detective outside of when he and Bugs Bunny stole Michael Jordan's shorts in the original Space Jam.
Yes, that cinematic masterpiece, Space Jam.
Well, if you're a 7-year-old, it's pretty good.
I think that's a movie that's perfect for its target audience.
Yeah, so Duck Detective looks cute. And then they closed out the show by showing SteamWorld Heist 2. So I talked about the SteamWorld Build, I think was the name of that game. That was the city builder I played. This is their sequel to Heist. The SteamWorld Heist game, and this one looks very similar to it, was basically a 2D tactics game. So like a side perspective 2D tactics game. So it looks like a platformer, but you are taking turns making your actions. So in that way, it's sort of like the Worms games. And so if you've ever played any of the Worms games, you're kind of taking your turns, taking your actions. This looks like they've expanded the gameplay quite a bit. So it looks neat. Like SteamWorld Heist is one of the better SteamWorld games.
It's kind of incredible that they already have another one sort of on the horizon.
Yeah.
Because Build just came out earlier this year, right? Was it last
year?
year?
No, it was the end of last year
Okay.
because I was playing that, trying to get it in before Game of the Year. But it was right at the end of the year. It was like maybe November or late October that game launched. Yeah, so this looks neat. And it's kind of cool. But it is cool that they're like maybe parallel developing these games at this point.
Well, similar to what you're talking about with Cat Quest of like, this is I mean, obviously they have more games and sort of this Steam World universe, but they're really leaning into this and building out these like different genres of game within this same game world is cool.
Yeah. I mean, hey, SteamWorld Dig 2 is still one of the best games I've played in probably the last decade. Like that game is amazing. And so, like this was the first heist game was good. So I'll be interested. Maybe they'll have that same jump because the SteamWorld Dig 2 was quite a big jump over SteamWorld Dig 1. So maybe this will be the same level of jump for them. So that was the Nintendo Indie World show. We'll go on and talk about some other news here. Let's see. The Delta emulator has been released for Apple iOS. So we talked about, I believe last week, that Apple had cleared the way to release emulators onto the App Store. And there were a few different ones that got released. One that got pulled because they were using somebody else's code. And but now they've released this Delta one, and it plays lots of different consoles. So basically every Nintendo console up through like the DS, I think at least, is playable on it.
Dang.
And it works remarkably well. So when we came in here today,
So is that what you were playing on earlier?
Yeah. So when we came in here earlier today, I was playing on that. I was running Beetle Adventure Racing on the Nintendo 64 on it, and it was running it at a pretty good clip. And this is an SE2, I think, is the phone. So it's about a 4 or 5 year old phone at this point, and it was already kind of on the lower. So like you can imagine if you have the top of the line 15 phone with the newest chip,
Sure.
How it should run. There's some cool things with this. So it's pretty easy to load ROMs onto it. So one of the ways I was doing it was just uploading those ROMs to my iCloud drive and then just pulling them off of that. So it made it, incredibly easy to load games and everything onto it. And one of the neat things is you can AirPlay. And I saw this online. I have not tried this myself, but somebody was AirPlaying it to their Apple TV, and it would put the image up on the screen. So then your phone just becomes a controller.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or you can connect a Bluetooth controller.
AirPlay is essentially Chromecast, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just different terms for it. But the thing that was really cool, the thing that really got me kind of excited was there was an image online. So unless they're faking this, they were doing it with a DS game. And so one screen was the bottom screen on their phone, and then the TV was the top screen from the DS, and they were playing a DS game with two screens.
Interesting.
So the bottom one was working as your touch screen, right? Because
Yeah.
you would have to be able to touch it and everything. And I thought that looked really like cool because, right, that's one of the problems with the DS is when you start emulating it, you run into all these problems, right? Like you don't have that same form factor.
Yeah.
And this was essentially a way to do it. I did see somebody else playing a DS game. It looked like on an iPad, and they had the Apple Pencil, and they were using it to play Kirby's Canvas Course,
Oh, cool.
which is a game that you played with the stylus on the DS,
Yeah.
and they were drawing with the Apple Pencil on the screen.
That was my thought when you said the phone was the bottom screen. I'm like, yeah, what phone doesn't have what smartphone doesn't have a stylus that comes with it? So you hit that.
Well, I mean, lots of iPhones don't have a stylus with them.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they never have.
This is why Android is superior.
But you can use the Apple Pencil with newer ones, which is essentially a stylus, kind of a fancy stylus. So yeah, I mean, like all that looks pretty cool. I did talk to a friend of mine, friend of the show, Derek. He and I were talking about it. I said, he was talking about, well, he can connect his Bluetooth controller and play it that way. And I said, yeah, but like, am I going to take a controller with me outside of the house? And if I do that, wouldn't it be almost just as easy just to take my Steam Deck at that point? So, because I was saying to him, like, this is really neat, but I don't, like, I was playing Beetle Adventure Racing. That's a horrible way to play Beetle Adventure Racing to me with a touchscreen control. So what sort of games am I going to play? Pokemon, sure. Japanese role-playing games of all stripes, sure. But I don't know that I'm going to really want to play like Super Mario Brothers or anything that requires, precise controls on a touchscreen. He said he had one of those backbone controllers. And those things condense down pretty small when they're not on the phone. So like I can see that being a way to do it, but carrying around like a full-size Xbox or PlayStation controller doesn't seem as practical to me. But that's just me. Maybe other people will like that. But it is neat, right? And like I think the question it raises for me is, this is the number one app on the App Store, or it has been the past few days. I think it probably still is. I'm going to check here real quick while we're talking and see if it's still the top.
I will say in favor of bringing a controller rather than bringing your Steam Deck is like I'm less worried about a controller getting broken.
Sure.
Like the Steam Deck, I would be worried with how full my backpack is that like the screen would get scratched or something.
Yeah, I think the Steam Deck comes with a case that you can like put it inside of, but I mean that it's still the same sort of concern there.
And it is bigger. Like, I mean, a controller, your phone's already in your pocket, so a controller is smaller. If you're carrying it around all day, like if you're in a big city like Chicago and you have a backpack or a purse that you're carrying all day, then a controller is smaller. It is less weight than a Steam Deck. I'm thinking more like traveling, right? Like if I'm on an airplane or something.
Yeah.
At that point, I'd rather just have the Steam Deck.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if I was somebody like, commuting to work and stuff, maybe a controller is easier in that situation.
I think the other thing is a controller's 6 times cheaper to replace.
Sure.
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's Alicia's point, right? Like if you break the controller, it's $50 to replace, or if it's a third-party one, it's even cheaper than that. Versus replacing a Steam Deck is a few hundred.
Yeah, but I could definitely see like long travel, it being better to have the Steam Deck
Sure. Yeah.
versus like if you're sitting in the back of the car for an hour, bring a controller.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of parents with the iPad, just giving a controller and connecting it, and the kid can sit in the back, and you can, have the iPad set up or something. So I think the thing that becomes really interesting about this, though, is, okay, so it is still the number one app in the free app list, and people are flocking to this, right? Like you've been able to do this before by jailbreaking your iPhone, right? And on the on Android, you've been able to do this, with side loading and actual emulators within the App Store on Android. But obviously, there's pent-up demand for this. Everyone's downloading this app. It's hugely popular. What if Nintendo had just gone ahead of this and released an app of their own and said, if you subscribe to Nintendo Online, you get all of those virtual console games, right, on here already. So all the games that have been released for the NES and the Super NES and the Game Boy and everything, all those games are already populated on here. You just click and download them and you play them. And now there's no market for that anymore, right? Now that it's free to do and it's as simple and works as well as this app does, no one will ever pay for that, most likely.
Well, especially if this emulator, like this is a constant frustration with Nintendo Switch Online is where are the old Pokemon games?
Right, the games that they aren't putting out.
And so if those are on an emulator that's free already, that they're not going to come shut down.
And that's been the number one most popular thing I've seen is people playing the Pokemon games, right? Because they make a lot of sense on a touch screen.
Yeah.
Because you don't need quick, reaction times and everything, precise control. So I just think how much money could Nintendo have made if Nintendo had released an app for Android and iPhone and said, hey, pay us $20 a year and you can play this collection of games, right? And for how many people would that just be easier than tracking down these ROMs and uploading them to their iCloud drive and stuff?
Shoot, I don't pay for apps and I would pay for that app.
Yeah, they could have charged $3 a month. And a lot of people would have paid that happily.
Because I really miss being able to play, even blue version.
Yeah.
Which, what did you say earlier, Mario? Red flags are harder to see with rose-tinted glasses. I acknowledge my nostalgia on thinking that that's the best Pokemon game. Because it is not. But it is for me.
This is really neat and it works well. I was playing it right before we started the show. I played Tecmo Bowl on it, which was actually doable, which I was kind of surprised. But again, I don't like the impreciseness of a touch screen for controls. It works a little better, I think, on it maybe works a little better for the later systems like the N64 that have the analog control, because then moving your thumb around on a screen feels more natural to that. But still, it's neat. I think it's a missed opportunity for Nintendo and a lot of these other game developers to have put their games out there. Even Sony, Sony could have put PlayStation 1 games out in an app, and it feels like a really missed opportunity. So anyways, that is the Delta app. It is available now on Apple products on the iPad and iPhone. Let's see. This isn't directly video game related, but I think it's at least tangentially related. Target has announced they're going to drastically reduce physical film and TV media in stores starting in 2025. So originally this story broke as they were removing all DVDs and Blu-rays from their stores starting next year. They clarified and said, well, not all, but we're going to drastically reduce them. This follows after, if you remember last year, Best Buy removed films and TV from their stores. So you can't go buy DVDs anymore at Best Buy.
This just makes me so sad. I'm like, how many good movies have I gotten from going to Target and being like, I don't need this on Blu-ray, but here's a $10, 3 movies packed in one. This just bums me out.
I remember when I first moved to my the town I did my undergrad in, and I didn't have internet because it wasn't set up and they couldn't get it set up for a few days. I went to, I guess it was probably Target, and bought the 3 season box pack of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was like, well, this will get me through, a few days to at least have something to do, have something to watch. And I was just say, call me old. When I first read this, I think maybe this was just like the hope. It was Target to drastically reduce physical film TV media costs in stores. That it was just going to cost less. And I was like, oh, good. That's a good thing because they're so expensive.
I've spent
buying a DVD is ridiculously expensive.
I've spent the last 7 years seeing Teen Titans full series for $50 and going, oh, I don't know if I can afford that, but I want it.
So the reason they're doing this is that people, according to their sales, people have stopped buying physical media. That so many people are just streaming things or even buying things digitally now to watch that, when it's not like it was the heyday of the late 90s, early 2000s, that a film could bomb at the box office and then come out on DVD and become a hit and actually recoup a significant part of its costs just through DVD rentals and DVD sales. And that doesn't exist anymore. And so they're cutting back on this. And the reason I bring this up on a video game podcast is because this is happening to film. Film got into streaming and digital delivery before games did to some degree, or at least went mainstream with it, let's say. How far away are we from going into Walmart and there not being video games on the shelves anymore? That the assumption is you will just buy the game digitally through whichever store you're on, the PlayStation, Xbox, Switch.
Well, I know we talked about this with the number of games that were only available digitally for a while. I think Baldur's Gate 3 was digital only. Alan Wake was digital only.
Yep.
I think my hope is that what is different for games as compared to film is I don't know if there's an equivalent to a GameStop for movies. I'm sure there is, but probably
not anymore. I mean, there was Suncoast Video.
Yeah. But I mean, if that becomes more and more commonplace, then, I don't know if GameStop's doing all that well to begin with, but,
no, they're not.
Those sorts of things, or I guess my hope is that the retro game stores that sell that, a lot of those will have some selection of new items. So I think that would be different, but yeah, it would be hard to go into it's hard to imagine, but at the same time, if you go into the Target in Marion and go to the video game section, they got 5 games that are actually in stock anyways. They do not restock video games very frequently.
Well, I think one way to look at it and think about it too is if you go to that Target today, it's my understanding they have the new Taylor Swift album as a $40 collector's edition LP, right? So you can get the record, the vinyl of it. Nobody's going to buy the cassette version or the CD version anymore, but people will go to the store to buy the vinyl version of their favorite artist's new album, right? Records have seen a surge, not back to where they were at any time historically, but certainly better than they have been, say a decade ago. And so that's become a way, for people who are diehard Taylor Swift fans or Beyonce fans or whoever it may be to be okay, I want to own something of this artist, right? Yeah. So I'm going to go buy this collector's edition or just, regular edition of this LP. So I wonder if that's what we're going to see more of with games, where the vast majority of games are distributed digitally, but there will be not even the $150 collector's editions that we see, but there will be hey, you can still go buy the physical version, and the physical version's maybe going to be $70. We'll sell you the digital version for $60, but the physical version is going to have this kind of cool case to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if they even just brought back the little game booklets that
the instruction manuals.
I would pay an extra $1 or $2 for those because I miss those.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the future of games, because that seems to be the reality of music now. And it may be the future of film very quickly.
And part of me wonders with film, I don't know what and maybe it's about the same timeline. Those movies go to streaming so fast now, out of the theater. It's available to rent on Amazon or buy on Amazon. Well, like less than a month later, whereas I feel like, I don't know, growing up, it was like, oh, the movie's out of theaters. Now you got to wait like 4 or 5 months before it comes out on DVD.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if I imagine that timeline is not quite as long anymore, but I wonder if that's also part of it, is just like the timeline of putting something on DVD.
Yeah,
can't keep up with something going to streaming.
Yeah, because even when you do have that a couple months in between things being out of theaters and being released, the digital usually comes out a couple weeks before the physical DVD.
And certainly with TV shows, TV show, if a season ends, it takes a while for that to get the box set of that season available in, I don't know, physical form. So, I don't know. I don't know if that plays a role. I mean, that's also different just in thinking about the release schedule of games. Doesn't necessarily run into, we've got it in theaters. We've got it, in some sort of other capacity before it comes to home release.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting too, seeing like, this is something that I remember, like, it was always at the local Comic-Con, but also even like at the comic book store, you would find, especially when I was a kid, you would find DVDs that people had ripped the episodes and put them on DVD. And so like and I've seen that slowly go away from most places, but if this reduction happens, like, will that come back?
There's the return of bootleg DVDs in your Walmart parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember a friend of mine. Back in college, she went on a trip to England, and when she came back, she had a copy of Lilo and Stitch on DVD. And this is like months before it was going to come out in the U.S., and it was a pirated copy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that she knew it when she bought it, but like, it was a very sweet gift and everything. She like gave it to me because she knew I was a fan of that film. And like people want physical media. Are they just going to be pulling it off of Pirate Bay and slapping it onto a DVD? Do we see a resurgence in the popularity of DVD burners and everything? Part of the problem right now for people who are diehard home theater enthusiasts is the bit rate of movies streaming online is not as high as if you go and you buy the ultra high definition Blu-ray disc, right? The audio is not as high of a bit rate if you're streaming it as if you go buy the disc. So those people who want the absolute best quality still go buy the disc, right? Rather than even buying it through Apple iTunes or, you know.
Well, and even thinking about, like, I'm happy to buy things on DVD rather than Blu-ray, but the preservation of, I want to own this, you can't take it away from me unless if you break into my house and rob me. Like, and when things are...
Which is a valid concern when they're pulling movies and shows from streaming services.
Yeah, when they're pulling movies and shows from streaming, and like when things are being changed in future releases for, whatever reason.
Right, when we're covering up Daryl Hannah's butt in Splash. No, they did that. They extended her hair so it covered her butt at the end of Splash, which is like an insane thing. Like, Splash, like, ooh, like too sexy Splash.
Oh man, but yeah, like that preservation aspect of like, there's one of my favorite movies of all time is Holiday Inn, and in that movie there's a incredibly offensive blackface routine, and like, I'm personally very big on if we pretend it didn't happen, then we forget, and that makes it not like we can't pretend that it didn't happen because it did. We need to talk about that it's not okay, but we can't pretend it didn't happen. And so like most I think Turner Classic Movies is the only channel that doesn't cut that scene when they air the movie, even though it's also the setup for it is an important plot moment. And it's like, yeah, if I didn't have that on DVD, I wouldn't trust being able to get it necessarily anywhere without knowing if they were going to cut that scene or not.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think I've been clear on here before. I've moved mostly to digital media, whether it's film or whether it's video games, just because the pain of storing all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had a huge DVD collection, and now it's just sitting there, and I'm like, I never open those cases. I never play those movies. I kind of like having them because as a teacher, like I think, oh, I would like to be able to use that in class someday. But then I look at it and I go, I can go on YouTube and find that scene if I need it. But then there's the preservation aspect, right? Like, which is when everything has gone digital, then what is to stop outside of piracy? What is to stop, a company from going in and altering this? And that original version no longer being available, which is, I think something to be fought against. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a much bigger issue than Target reducing their DVD selection. I think at this point it leaves Walmart as the only major retailer with still like a fully devoted section. And you kind of have to wonder, like, if this is the writing on the wall, how long before Walmart follows? Mm-hmm. And the other issue so I think the stories that both of you told are really good about this. What happens to people who don't have a lot of money, right? Who maybe don't have internet at home, can't have these movies streaming, and they go to Walmart. There's not video rental places anymore. So they go to Walmart and they go through that bargain bin where there's,
$5 movie bin.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done that before, right? Particularly when I didn't have money, right? Like go through there and can I find something that I missed and I've always wanted to watch? Yeah. And for $5, it's worth it.
Yeah. And I guess, like I said, I think about it and I connect it most to the instances where, the internet goes out. And sometimes that's for an extended period of time. I mean, I remember last summer, I don't know what happened if it was, we had a big storm or something like that, but I got back into town and my internet was out. And when I called to set it back up, they're like, oh, we can come out in like 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, I guess I need to figure out how to like keep myself busy for 2 weeks. And so I think, I went and bought I think there was like the James Bond collection or something like that. And it's like, I can watch these at the very least. I can do something with my time because
I like how household issues with you turn into, I'm going to discover a new fandom.
Well, I mean, I've always liked the James Bond movies, but I wanted to have those to begin with. So,
sure.
It was an additional sort of motivator to actually like spend the money to buy something like that.
Yeah. Right. It's the reason to look and say, okay, this $50 was a luxury that I wasn't going to do now, but now.
Right. Like I had already seen Avatar before buying that. I already seen a number of these Bond films before buying it. But it was just like when you're basically reliant on this service in order to provide yourself with really, I mean, most games require an internet connection at this point.
Right.
A lot of these, obviously all of these streaming services, and I'm not gonna use my phone's hotspot for, all of that, because that's obviously then just gonna rack up a larger bill as well. And so, I think that's it's important to at least have the option. If people want to go digital, by all means go digital.
Yeah.
But having the option of the physical media, I do think is important.
Yeah.
Remind me after the show to tell you about the James Bond exhibit I went to in Chicago.
Okay.
It was pretty cool. Didn't know you were a big James Bond fan. Let's see. Other news, Keanu Reeves is the voice of Shadow the Hedgehog in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I think we talked about the year of Shadow the Hedgehog last week, but we didn't yet know the voice. So it's been cast as Keanu Reeves.
That's funny because I was talking to my sister about it, and she reminded me, she's like, yeah, Keanu was one of the early ideas that people had for Shadow. Like when Sonic, the second Sonic movie first came out and they had that teaser, like Jason Momoa and Keanu Reeves were the two that everybody kept saying. And I've just been so overwhelmed by all the people saying Hayden Christensen in the last several months that I had completely forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of neat casting, like especially after Idris Elba, like to like go get another big name.
Yeah.
But like one that fits well, right? Like the thing about Idris Elba is he's not like...
You didn't expect him to be Knuckles.
Right. He wasn't just a big name for the sake of it, right? Yeah. Like he once you thought about it, you were like, oh yeah, that's actually inspired casting, right? Like you just didn't go get Timothée Chalamet, right? Like because he's the hot name at the moment. You got somebody who's kind of a big name, but is like actually fitting of this character.
Yeah.
You didn't go get our friend Chris, right? Like
You don't think that's inspired Garfield casting?
I mean, if you hate,
He's a huge lasagna fan. You didn't know that? Method acting.
Is this like his interview about how much he loved Mario when he was a kid?
I
Stomping on.
don't remember if
Koopas?
I've seen that one, but
It was in one of the videos when they were
was one of
announcing the cast.
It was one of the early announcement videos where they released like the first trailer, and it goes from Jack Black being like, yeah, like I learned to breathe fire and I did all this great stuff, and then it cuts over to Chris Pratt and it's the most obvious cue card reading you've ever seen in your life.
But he's talking about like seeing the game when he was a kid and being like, someday I'm going to play Mario. And you're like, what the hell?
He's like, yeah, I loved playing Mario as a kid, and like stomping on Koopas.
Yeah, it feels very
So
manufactured. So, yeah, I don't know. This is neat casting. Like, I mean, Keanu Reeves is not a great actor, but he always brings something kind of unique to his roles.
Well,
So-
I love, somebody online pointed out that in the first Sonic movie, you know, when you're getting all the Sonic narration about like being near the beginning when he's still technically in hiding from everybody, but he'll like watch TV through the window. He watches Speed and is like, "Yeah, go Keanu!" And so people are like, we need to have a moment when Sonic hears Shadow speak and just goes, "Keanu." And like I could see Sega doing that fourth wall break.
sure.
Let's see. Final Fantasy XVI's DLC director has said the game was successful in attracting a younger player audience with its revamped combat. So if you remember, Final Fantasy XVI had sort of that action third player combat, sort of, you know, building off of something like, say, a Devil May Cry. They have said that attracted a younger audience to the Final Fantasy games, which I guess I don't think of those games skewing older, but maybe they do nowadays.
I think it lines up with, I remember OJ talking about Final Fantasy 16 being a really good game, but not feeling like Final Fantasy because it's not that turn-based combat that the older games had. So I guess I can kind of see that.
I do also think it's improved from 15's, which was also sort of that action RPG combat as well. I mean, I don't know if it's the same teams that did the 7 remakes, but I thought the 16 combat was really satisfying. It is very different. It doesn't feel, in many ways, it's not what I associate with Final Fantasy, but I can't say I'm surprised. I think that there are so few turn-based games at all nowadays, whether, you know, you've got Pokemon, you've got like the tactics style games of a Fire Emblem.
Like a Dragon now has moved
True,
out.
true. But But there aren't many turn-based games, and so I think that
Dragon Quest.
that's I don't know if you'd call it a genre, but a style that is not it's not trendy, it's not popular, and so there are probably a lot of young people who've never played a turn-based game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Larian, the studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, has announced that they're working on 2 projects based on their original IP. So I think the thing that's important about that is they say their original IP. So this could be like a Divinity Original Sin sequel, could be one of these projects that is their original IP, but obviously the other one would most likely be something entirely new. Obviously, they're not working on a Baldur's Gate 4 as they've announced. So it is kind of interesting to hear that they're working on 2 projects instead of going full force into something the same scale as Baldur's Gate 3. It sounds like these might be smaller projects they're working on to try to get something out on a more regular basis. City Skylines 2 Beach Properties DLC is being refunded to people who bought it and add it to the game for free after there were so many complaints about the DLC being underwhelming. Those who bought the season pass will get some additional DLC to make up for that. They won't get refunded, but they'll get some additional DLC. PlayStation trophies are being brought to the PC with a new PlayStation overlay. So this is part of the Ghost of Tsushima port to PC is the first game that's going to feature this. But soon you'll be able to actually earn PlayStation trophies on your PC playing these games. And then we get into our entertainment section here because there's several big stories about adaptations of video games. So The Witcher on Netflix will end with season 5. So I believe their current season that they're just premiering is season 4.
I think so, because it's the first Liam Hemsworth one.
Yeah, so
right now.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that it changed.
Yeah, he's the new Darren. Sorry, that's a Bewitched joke.
Okay.
I just dated myself.
We were just both like,
the blank stare.
okay.
I don't know. Go ask one of the older professors. They'll get my joke. They'll validate it.
Justin's like, this is why I need OJ and Christina.
It is. There's at least like once every couple of weeks, there's a joke where I'm like, oh, OJ would have gotten that joke. OJ's old like me. Let's see. Fallout 4 has rocketed to be Europe's best-selling game last week following the series release. So, much like with The Witcher, when that series premiered on Netflix and those games suddenly shot up the sales charts, same is happening here with Fallout. Same thing happened with The Last of Us. This is part of the reason all these companies are in a rush to get new game adaptations, films and television of these games because it actually benefits game sales.
Have either of you watched any of it?
I have not. Have you?
No. I've never played a Fallout. I've got friends who really like them. I might check it out at some point, but there's not a ton of like, oh, I got to watch this because I don't have any connection really to the series to begin with.
My brother, who I'm fairly certain has never played any of the games, did message me this week and say he was 4 episodes into it and really enjoying it.
It sounds like people are enjoying it.
Yeah, so I think even people who aren't familiar with the games, though, are connecting with it, which is good.
Yeah,
that's
everything I've heard is that it's great. I'm really bad at watching TV shows, and especially one that I don't have emotional connection to.
This is on Prime, right?
Yeah.
I think it's Prime, yeah.
Yeah, it's Amazon Prime. Speaking of which, of Fallout, they have already renewed it for a 2nd season. So if you are enjoying the Fallout series, good news. They're making a 2nd season of that. This is the craziest news of the week. And I am excited. Comedy Central is making a Golden Axe animated series, which is absolutely the most insane news that could have come out about just about anything getting adapted into a movie or a TV show. Golden Axe, the side-scrolling brawler that is known for beating up gnomes who steal your magic, is now getting a animated series on Comedy Central. So, like, not just that they're making like an anime or something of it, but like they're going to make it into a comedy series on Comedy Central. That's crazy news. I don't know how that's going to work out, but like, hey, at least it's kind of inspired.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like if you're making that decision, you have a direction you want to go, which is hopefully a good thing.
Yeah, I wonder how that works. I wonder, is Sega going out and just asking for pitches? Like, here are, are they going to agents or going to writers and saying, hey, here's 3 or 4 of our properties, come to us with a pitch?
Yeah.
And is that how that's working? Or are they going to Comedy Central and Comedy Central is developing that? Like, I wonder, is it the chicken or the egg in that situation? Because I wonder how you get to that, right? Like, that's not a franchise that you would normally think of, like Sonic. Like Sonic, if you make that for Comedy Central, I'd be like, okay, yeah, because Sonic's,
Yeah.
there's a goofy side to Sonic that you can see them embracing. But Golden Axe doesn't have that. So, like, how do you decide we're going to make this a comedy?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'd be interested to know some of the development history of that. Let's see. Last thing here to talk about real quick is the MetaQuest 2 price has been slashed to $199. So I know, Mario, you sent us that some Sam's clubs were selling it for $99.
I think so.
And then I know, what was it? Target was selling it for $199 with a $50 gift card. So yeah, I mean, at $100, that's a pretty amazing price to get into VR.
Yeah.
And that Quest 2 headset is still a very good headset.
Yeah, if I had money to spare this month, I might go for that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I would, like I said, I would normally recommend somebody get the Quest 3 now because that's the newest and best hardware. But, for $99, that's hard to beat if you can find it at that price. At $199 with a $50 gift card, it's a little maybe more debatable, but that's still a good price. All right, that does it for news. So let's move into our big question. And our big question for this week is, have you ever come back to a game you didn't like at first to discover you actually like it on a second chance? So basically, did you play a game, kind of fall off of it, maybe even have a negative experience, come back at some point later and try it again and discover, oh, I actually really like this game? And Mario, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so when I saw the question, I was trying to think of a video game, and honestly, I couldn't come up with one, but I think an honest answer to this would be Magic the Gathering. The first time I played it with a friend, and it was fine. He was really into it. I had never really got into it, but at this group of friends, they would always talk about it, and I was always sort of like, smile and nod because I had no idea what was going on. And I think we had a free, afternoon one day. And so we played a game and I was like, okay, that's cool. Didn't really connect with it all that much. And then I don't know how many months later, I don't know if I watched a video on YouTube or just sort of in their conversations, I kind of did some of my own looking into it and got a lot more interested, a lot more intrigued. And I don't play a ton of Magic anymore just because I don't have anybody here to play it with. But, when I go home, we'll get together and still play. And, it's hard to keep up with how much they put out now. But that's a game that I got pretty big into. And so that's probably the answer I would feel most confident about because I couldn't really think of a video game where I fell off it, returned to it, and was like, oh, this game was a lot better than I first gave it credit.
All right. Alicia, how about you?
Yeah, I struggled with this one too. I think I ended up coming up with two answers. One of them was Pac-Man World 2 on the PlayStation 2, which I remember playing and being like, this is fine. And that was, when the game first came out. And then somewhere around probably 2009, 2010. Because Wreck-It Ralph, prompted me to go back to that game. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a really fun game. So that one. And then also, oddly, in a way, Kingdom Hearts 1, I was not good at it when I first played it. So it was very much the one, my sister and I each got 30-minute turns, and she would play Kingdom Hearts 1 and I would play Kingdom Hearts 2, and that was how we took our turns. And so I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't good at it. But after I beat Kingdom Hearts 2 and went back to Kingdom Hearts 1, and seeing my sister go through it and actually be able to do all of the things that I had struggled so much with, was very much one of those that I came back to and was like, okay, yeah, this is more fun than I thought it was when I first played it.
Yeah, I feel like I just never went back to Kingdom Hearts because I fell off of that game, and I didn't even hate it. I just wasn't really hooked on it, and I just never went back to it. And I always kind of regret it not going back to it. And then it became 50 different Kingdom Hearts games. And I was like, am I really ever going to play all of these?
I think it would even just be hard to go back to the first one now.
Yeah.
I think it would feel. I played 1 and 2 not super long ago, and they feel kind of dated at this point.
Yeah.
They're fun, and I do still have some nostalgia for them, but they can be tough to go back to.
It's really interesting because there's a YouTube channel that's made my girlfriend play, and they'll make each other play different video games, and she just found out about she had completely missed Kingdom Hearts altogether, and so she just found out about it a month ago. And so of course she wanted to play it, and he was talking when they got to the Little Mermaid level, and I was like, I remember how bad these controls were. And he's like, yeah, the controls are pretty bad, but you use the right stick and the left. I'm like, I remember it being L2, R2. And he's like, of course, this is the PS4 version. I'm like, okay, that's why. It's still janky controls, but it's not as janky as it was on PS2.
Yeah. So my answer for this, I think, is I remember playing a lot of PC games that I just did not understand at the time when I was playing them because I was too young probably to be playing them, or sometimes I didn't have the full instructions because maybe I got the games in nefarious ways. So I remember the original Syndicate being one of those where it is this, sort of cyberpunkish game where you are a corporation and you're controlling people to go out and sabotage your competitors and everything. And it looked really cool, and it was kind of fun to run around and shoot the people in this isometric world, but I didn't understand the meta game super well when I was playing it initially. And then going back, it was probably maybe a couple years later going back and playing it and being like, oh, okay, yeah, I get this now. Mm-hmm. This actually makes sense to me, and really enjoying that game. And so there's several PC games like that where I feel like I played them probably a little too young, and if I went back and played them, I would probably connect with them much better now. But yeah, that's probably my answer for it. That does it for this week. Thank you again, Mario and Alicia. Thank you for those of you listening. You can check out more of our episodes and other content at salukigames.com. You can check out the Saluki X, the Eclipse game, also through our website at salukigames.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.